Get away from her. Billionaire Ethan Blackwood jumped from his SUV before the driver could fully stop. His polished shoes hit the muddy forest road. He grabbed the thick wooden walking stick lying beside the trailgate and ran. 30 yards ahead, Naomi Reed was backed against a fallen tree, crying as 3 large wild dogs circled her through the wet grass. Her black and white Maid uniform was streaked with mud. One shoe was gone. Her hands trembled as she tried desperately to keep the animals away. Please, somebody. Ethan's heart slammed against his chest. Naomi. She looked toward him. Mr. Blackwood, don't come closer. But Ethan kept running. One dog moved toward Naomi. Ethan stepped between them, raised the stick, and struck it hard against the ground. Back! The sharp sound made the animal hesitate. Another approached from the side. Ethan turned quickly, waving the stick and shouting until it backed away. He wasn't trying to hurt them. He was creating enough distance for Naomi to escape. Move behind me, he ordered. Naomi stumbled toward him. Then Ethan heard something. Laughter. Soft. Almost hidden beneath the wind. He turned toward the trees. And froze. Behind a thick oak stood his fiancée, Victoria Langley. Red coat. Perfect makeup. Phone in her hand. And a smile on her face. She wasn't running to help. She wasn't frightened. She was watching. Ethan stared at her. Victoria. Her smile vanished instantly. And in that moment, Ethan Blackwood realized the dogs had not found Naomi by accident. Before we continue, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from, because what happened in those woods began weeks earlier, and the reason Victoria wanted Naomi terrified had nothing to do with jealousy. Naomi Reed had worked at Blackwood Manor for 8 months. At 39, she had already lived enough life to understand that wealthy houses often looked peaceful only from the outside. She was a widow. Her husband had died 5 years earlier, leaving Naomi to raise their 16-year-old daughter, Layla, alone. The job at Blackwood Manor paid well enough for Naomi to keep Layla in a good school and begin saving for college. That was all she wanted. Work. Security. A quiet life. Ethan Blackwood was 43 and had built one of the country's largest private logistics companies. He owned warehouses, transportation networks, and enough property that newspapers regularly estimated his fortune. But inside his own house, Ethan was surprisingly simple. He drank coffee from the same chipped mug every morning. He remembered staff birthdays. And he disliked people being treated as if their jobs made them less important. Naomi respected him. She also felt sorry for him. Because Ethan trusted Victoria completely. Victoria Langley had entered his life 2 years earlier. She was elegant, intelligent, and came from a family known for expensive charity events and old social connections. In public, she appeared warm. Inside the mansion, Naomi saw something different. Victoria never shouted when Ethan was nearby. She didn't need to. Her cruelty was quieter. She would deliberately move jewelry and accuse staff of touching it. She would send kitchen workers home, then complain that dinner was late. She once poured expensive perfume across Naomi's freshly cleaned dressing room floor and said, "You missed a spot." Naomi cleaned it. No argument. No reaction. That seemed to bother Victoria. "You're very calm," she said one afternoon. Naomi continued folding towels. "I try to be. Even when people disrespect you." Naomi looked up. "Especially then." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because if someone wants to see me lose control, giving them what they want seems foolish." Victoria said nothing. But from that day forward, something changed. She stopped treating Naomi like an inconvenience. She started treating her like a threat. 3 weeks before the forest incident, Naomi entered Ethan's library to dust his desk. Victoria was already inside. She stood beside the open wall safe. When she saw Naomi, she slammed it shut. "What are you doing here?" "Cleaning." "I didn't call you." "I clean this room every Tuesday." Victoria walked quickly toward her. "You saw nothing." Naomi frowned. "I didn't say I saw anything." "Good." Victoria pushed past her. On the carpet near the safe lay a tiny white card. Naomi picked it up. It had no name. Only numbers. The 3rd of November, 47. She assumed it belonged to Ethan and placed it carefully on his desk. That evening Victoria returned. The card was gone. The next morning, Naomi found an envelope beneath her locker. Inside was $5,000 in cash. No note. No explanation. Naomi immediately went to the estate manager. "I found this." The manager stared at the money. "Where?" "In my locker." Within 20 minutes, Victoria appeared. Her face showed perfect surprise. "Oh my God." Naomi looked at her. Victoria continued. "That's the money missing from my travel bag." The room went silent. Naomi understood instantly. "You put it there." Victoria gasped. "Excuse me. I didn't take your money." Ethan was traveling in Singapore. There was no one in the house powerful enough to challenge Victoria. She wanted Naomi dismissed immediately. But the estate manager refused without reviewing security footage. The cameras showed something strange. Someone wearing a hood had entered the staff corridor at 2:13 a.m. Their face couldn't be seen. But Naomi noticed the shoes. Red-soled designer heels. Victoria owned the same pair. The accusation disappeared. No apology followed. But 2 days later, Victoria approached Naomi in the garden. "You should have taken the money." Naomi stopped pruning roses. "What?" $5,000. You could have walked away comfortable." "I don't want your money." Victoria smiled. "That's your problem." Naomi studied her. "You're scared of something." For the first time, Victoria's expression slipped. Only for a second. But Naomi saw it. Then Victoria whispered, "You need to learn when curiosity becomes dangerous." A week later, Ethan announced they would spend Saturday at Blackwood's private woodland estate. A small engagement photo session. Lunch. No guests. Victoria specifically requested Naomi accompany them to help with wardrobe and refreshments. Naomi nearly refused. Something felt wrong. But Victoria smiled warmly in front of Ethan. "Naomi is the only person who knows how I like everything arranged." So Naomi went. At 3 that afternoon, Victoria asked her to retrieve a shawl from a cottage beyond the Western Trail. Naomi followed the directions. There was no cottage. Instead, she found an old fenced enclosure hidden behind the trees. The gate stood open. Then she heard growling. 3 dogs emerged. Not pets. Frightened, aggressive animals that appeared to have been deliberately released. Naomi backed away. Then she heard Victoria's voice from somewhere behind the trees. "Run, Naomi." Naomi turned. Victoria stood partially hidden behind an oak. Smiling. That was when the dogs began moving toward her. And now Ethan was standing between Naomi and the animals with a stick in his hands. Security from the SUV finally arrived and safely drove the dogs away using noise deterrents. Naomi collapsed against the tree, crying. Ethan immediately turned toward Victoria. "What did I just see?" Victoria stepped forward. "I don't know. I heard screaming and came to look." Naomi stared at her. "You opened the gate." Victoria's expression sharpened. "That's insane." "I heard you." "You're confused." Ethan looked between them. Then his security chief approached carrying something recovered beside the enclosure. A small remote control. 1 button. 1 red light. Ethan examined it. "What does this operate?" The security chief pointed toward the enclosure. "The electronic gate." Silence. Victoria's face went pale. Then Naomi noticed initials engraved into the back of the remote. Phil. Victoria Langley. Ethan slowly raised his eyes. But before he could speak, his phone rang. His company's head of security. Ethan answered. "Sir," the man said urgently, "someone accessed your private corporate archive 20 minutes ago." Ethan frowned. "Using whose credentials?" A pause. Then, Victoria Langley's. Ethan stared at his fiancée. And suddenly, The dogs were no longer the biggest problem in the forest. Ethan Blackwood lowered the phone slowly. The forest suddenly felt colder. His security chief's words repeated in his head. Someone had entered the company's private archive using Victoria Langley's credentials. At almost the exact moment Naomi had been cornered by the dogs. Ethan looked at Victoria. She had stopped smiling. "What did you access?" Victoria folded her arms. "I have no idea what you're talking about. My private archive. I don't even know how to access it." Ethan held up the phone. "Your credentials were used." "That proves nothing." Naomi was still leaning against the tree, trying to steady her breathing. Ethan turned toward his security chief, Malcolm Shaw. "Take Naomi back to the main house." Naomi shook her head. "No." Ethan looked at her. "You've been through enough." "That's exactly why I'm staying." Victoria scoffed. "This is absurd." Naomi ignored her. "That archive access happened while I was out here. That means the dogs may have been a distraction." Ethan's expression changed. He had been thinking the same thing. Malcolm looked at the remote again. "Sir, there's another issue." "What?" "This remote isn't standard equipment." He turned it over. "The enclosure gate was modified recently." "How recently?" "Within the last few days." Victoria stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. Somebody is framing me." Naomi looked at her. "Just like somebody framed me with $5,000. Victoria's jaw tightened. Ethan heard it. Every word. He turned toward Naomi. "What $5,000? Naomi froze. Victoria immediately interrupted. "She's twisting something that already got resolved." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Naomi." She took a slow breath. "A week ago, cash was placed inside my locker. Miss Langley said it had been stolen from her." Ethan looked at Victoria. "You accused her of theft." "It looked suspicious." "The cameras cleared me," Naomi said. Ethan's face hardened further. "And nobody told me." Victoria snapped. "You were in Singapore. It was a household issue." "No." Ethan stepped closer. "Accusing one of my employees of theft is not a household issue." Victoria looked toward the road. "This is becoming dramatic." Ethan almost laughed. 3 wild dogs just surrounded Naomi after you sent her alone into the woods, and somehow I'm being dramatic." Victoria said nothing. Malcolm's radio crackled. "Sir, we found the enclosure log." Ethan turned. A security officer emerged from the trees carrying a tablet. "The gate has an internal event history." "And?" "It was opened remotely at 3:17 p.m. Naomi looked toward Ethan. "That was exactly when she had reached the trail." Ethan asked. "Which device?" The officer hesitated. "The remote Mr. Shaw is holding." Every face turned toward Victoria. She stared at the initials engraved into the casing. "Phil. That isn't mine." Malcolm raised an eyebrow. "Your initials are on it." "Anyone could engrave initials." Ethan's voice went quiet. "Then we'll check fingerprints." For the first time, Victoria looked genuinely frightened. But before anyone could move, Ethan's phone rang again. "Corporate security." He answered immediately. "What now?" The voice on the other end was urgent. "Mr. Blackwood, whoever accessed the archive downloaded one file." "Which one?" A pause. "Project North Star." Ethan went completely still. Naomi noticed. "What is Project North Star?" He didn't answer her. Not immediately. Project North Star was one of Blackwood Logistics' most confidential investigations. 6 months earlier, Ethan had discovered irregular payments connected to several international shipping contracts. Nothing had been proven yet. But millions of dollars were moving through shell vendors. Someone inside the company was siphoning money. Only 4 people knew the investigation existed. Ethan, Malcolm, his chief financial officer, and the outside attorney conducting the review. Victoria was not one of them. Ethan looked at Malcolm. How would she even know the file exists? Malcolm's expression turned grim. She shouldn't. Victoria stepped backward. Ethan, I don't know anything about North Star. He looked at her sharply. I never said the name out loud. Silence. Victoria realized her mistake. Naomi saw it too. Ethan stared at her. How do you know what North Star is? Victoria's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then she turned and ran. Victoria! She sprinted toward the parked cars. Malcolm shouted to security. Stop her! But before anyone reached her, Victoria pulled a key fob from her pocket. A black Range Rover flashed its lights. She jumped inside. The engine roared. Ethan ran after her. Victoria! She reversed violently, throwing mud across the road, then accelerated toward the western exit. Malcolm grabbed his radio. Close the gate. No response. He tried again. West gate, locked down now. Static. Then, Mr. Shaw, the gate system is offline. Victoria disappeared through the trees. Ethan stood in the road, breathing hard. Naomi approached slowly. She planned an exit. Ethan looked at her. She planned all of this. But Naomi wasn't convinced. No. He frowned. What? She planned something. Naomi looked back toward the enclosure. But I don't think she planned the dogs alone. Ethan stared at her. Why? Because she was hiding behind the tree. So? If she wanted me attacked, why stay close enough to be seen? Ethan said nothing. Naomi continued. She wanted to watch. That doesn't help her. No. But maybe she was waiting for something. Malcolm suddenly looked toward the service road. Or someone. They returned to the Woodland house immediately. Ethan ordered every employee on the property accounted for. One person was missing. A temporary groundskeeper hired 3 days earlier. Name: Samuel Pike. The employment documents were fake. The address didn't exist. And the photograph on the application belonged to a dead man. Ethan looked at Malcolm. Find out who he really is. We're working on it. Naomi sat at the kitchen table while a medic checked scratches on her hands. Ethan entered. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he said, I owe you an apology. Naomi looked up. For what? For doubting you. You saw me surrounded by dogs and Victoria behind a tree. No. I mean before today. He pulled out a chair. You were telling me something was wrong without actually saying it, weren't you? Naomi considered the question. I didn't have proof. You had instinct. Instinct gets employees fired when rich people don't like what they hear. That hit him. Ethan leaned back. What did you see? Naomi thought carefully. The card near your safe. What card? White. Numbers on it. 47, 11, 03. Ethan's expression changed. Say that again. The 3rd of November, 47. He stood so quickly the chair scraped the floor. What? Naomi stared at him. Those numbers mean something. Ethan walked toward the window. Yes. What? He turned. They're not random numbers. His face had gone pale. They're a container code. Container. Blackwood Logistics container the 3rd of November, 47 disappeared 9 years ago. Naomi frowned. What was inside? Ethan hesitated. Officially. She waited. Medical equipment. And unofficially. Ethan's jaw tightened. We never found out. Then Malcolm entered carrying a laptop. Sir. We identified Samuel Pike. Ethan looked over. The screen showed an old company photograph. A younger man in a Blackwood Logistics uniform stood beside a cargo vessel. Naomi recognized him immediately. That's the man from the Woodland gate. Malcolm nodded. His real name is David Mercer. Ethan's expression went blank. Mercer. Malcolm looked at him. Yes. Victoria's mother's maiden name is Mercer. The room went silent. Malcolm continued. David Mercer is her uncle. Ethan stared at the photograph. What does he have to do with the missing container? Malcolm opened another file. Everything. David Mercer had been supervising the port on the night container the 3rd of November, 47 disappeared. 3 days later, he vanished. His family claimed he had moved overseas. But now he had returned using a false identity. Inside Ethan's private woodland estate. At the exact moment Victoria accessed Project North Star. Naomi whispered. So this started 9 years ago. Ethan shook his head. No. He opened another archived report. Attached was the original ownership record for container the 3rd of November, 47. The contracting company listed on the paperwork belonged to one family. Langley Holdings. Victoria's father's company. And suddenly Ethan understood why Victoria had worked so hard to get Naomi out of his house. Naomi hadn't simply seen Victoria near his safe. She had accidentally found the one code capable of connecting Victoria's family to a secret Ethan had been trying to uncover for almost a decade. Then Malcolm's phone buzzed. He checked the message. His face changed instantly. What? Malcolm looked at Ethan. Victoria's vehicle has been found. Where? 2 miles from here. And Victoria? Gone. Ethan frowned. Then Malcolm added. There's blood on the driver's seat. Naomi's eyes widened. And someone carved a message into the dashboard. Ethan stared at him. What message? Malcolm swallowed. Stop looking for container the 3rd of November, 47. If. Ethan stared at the photograph of Victoria's abandoned Range Rover. Blood on the driver's seat. A warning carved into the dashboard. Stop looking for container the 3rd of November, 47. For several seconds, nobody in the woodland house spoke. Then Naomi said the thing Ethan had been trying not to think. What if Victoria didn't leave that car willingly? Malcolm Shaw looked up from his laptop. The amount of blood is small. It could be from a cut. Or it could have been placed there, Ethan said. Malcolm nodded. Exactly. Naomi frowned. To make us think someone took her. Or to make us stop looking for her. Ethan grabbed his jacket. Where was the vehicle found? Near the old Bell Harbor access road. Ethan stopped. Bell Harbor. The same private port where container the 3rd of November, 47 had disappeared 9 years earlier. That's not coincidence. 20 minutes later, 3 Blackwood security vehicles were racing toward the coast. Naomi sat beside Ethan. He had tried to make her stay behind. She refused. If this started because I saw that code, she said, I'm not going to sit in a house waiting for someone else to explain what it means. Ethan hadn't argued again. Bell Harbor had been abandoned for almost a decade. Rusting cranes leaned over dark water. Storage buildings stood empty. Wind pushed loose metal against warehouse walls. Victoria's Range Rover sat near an old loading ramp. Driver's door open. Malcolm approached carefully. No one touches anything until police arrive. Ethan looked through the window. The blood was there. So was the carved message. But Naomi noticed something else. The seat. What? It's too far back. Ethan looked at her. Victoria is shorter than me. She pointed. She couldn't drive comfortably with the seat like that. Malcolm's expression sharpened. So someone else drove the car. Naomi nodded. Ethan looked toward the abandoned harbor buildings. Which means Victoria may have been brought here. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo. Victoria. Alive. She was sitting inside what looked like an old office, wrists tied loosely in front of her. No visible injuries. Behind her was a faded shipping map. Under the image. Come alone to Warehouse 6. Bring the North Star file. Ethan's jaw tightened. Malcolm read over his shoulder. You're not going alone. They're asking for a file they already downloaded. Maybe they didn't get all of it. Ethan looked toward Naomi. Project North Star contained financial records, but not the original container manifest. Naomi understood. The thing connecting Victoria's family to the missing container. Yes. Malcolm looked across the harbour. And you have it? No. That was the strange part. Ethan had spent 9 years looking for it. Then Naomi suddenly remembered the white card. The 3rd of November, 47. Could that card have been more than the container number? Ethan looked at her. What do you mean? You said I found it near your safe. Yes. Victoria was holding it before she left. Ethan thought. Then his face changed. That wasn't my safe. What? The wall safe in my library belonged to my father. Naomi stared at him. Ethan's father, Jonathan Blackwood, had founded the original freight company decades earlier. He died 10 years ago. 1 year before container the 3rd of November, 47 disappeared. My father used numeric codes for storage locations, Ethan said. Malcolm immediately opened an archive database. What would the 3rd of November, 47 mean in his system? Ethan shook his head. I don't know. Naomi repeated the numbers. 47. 11. 3. Malcolm typed. Nothing. Then Ethan looked toward the harbour. Warehouse 47. Malcolm stopped. There is no warehouse 47 here. Not here. Ethan's face hardened. At the original Blackwood port. The company's first port facility had been demolished 12 years earlier. Except for one building. A private records depot. Building 47. Ethan called corporate security. Pull the old floor plans for Building 47. 30 seconds later, the file arrived. Floor 11. Storage room 3. The 3rd of November, 47. Naomi whispered. It was never the container. It was an address. Ethan looked stunned. My father hid something there. But before they could move, a light flickered inside Warehouse 6. Someone was watching. Malcolm raised his hand. Security spread out. Then Victoria screamed from inside. Ethan! He ran. Sir! Malcolm shouted. Ethan ignored him. Naomi followed several steps behind. They entered the warehouse. Victoria sat near the center beneath a hanging work lamp. A man stood behind her. David Mercer. Her uncle. The temporary groundskeeper. He held no weapon. Instead, he held a thick folder. Stop there, David said. Ethan did. You sent the message. Yes. You released the dogs. David's expression changed. No. Naomi stared at him. Then who did? David looked at Victoria. She did. Victoria began crying. Ethan's face hardened. I already know she opened the gate. No, David said. You don't. He stepped around Victoria. She was supposed to frighten Naomi. Nothing more. Victoria shook her head. I didn't know the animals would be that aggressive. Naomi stared at her. You watched me cry. Victoria looked away. I needed you out of the house. Why? Because you found the code. Ethan stepped closer. Who told you what the code meant? Victoria looked at David. My uncle. David opened the folder. Inside was an old photograph. Jonathan Blackwood. Ethan's father. Standing beside David Mercer. And Victoria's father, Charles Langley. The date on the back. 9 years before the container disappeared. Ethan looked up. My father knew both of you. David nodded. Your father created the original operation. Ethan's stomach dropped. What operation? David tossed another document onto a crate. A shipping manifest. Not drugs. Not weapons. Something stranger. Protected witness relocation cargo. New identities. Legal records. Personal belongings. People. Ethan stared at the page. Container the 3rd of November, 47 was part of a government witness transfer. Unofficially. David nodded. Your father used Blackwood vessels to move people whose lives were in danger. Naomi whispered. Then why did the container disappear? David's face darkened. Because someone sold the passenger list. Ethan went still. Who? David looked at Victoria. Then at Ethan. Charles Langley. Victoria shook her head violently. No. My father said Jonathan betrayed him. Your father lied. David continued. Charles sold names to people searching for witnesses. Jonathan discovered it and hid the final list before he died. And 9 years later, someone found out that one surviving copy still existed. Ethan's mind raced. The missing container. It was staged, David said. Empty container. False disappearance. It created enough confusion to bury the search for the real list. Naomi looked at Victoria. And Project North Star. Victoria wiped tears from her face. My father learned Ethan had reopened the financial trail. So he sent you to Ethan. Victoria said nothing. Her silence answered. Ethan looked devastated. Our relationship. At first. She couldn't finish. At first what? My father introduced us because he wanted access. Ethan stepped backward. Naomi saw pain replace anger. Then Victoria whispered. But I didn't expect to love you. Ethan gave a bitter laugh. Everybody says that after the lie comes apart. David suddenly looked toward the warehouse entrance. We're out of time. Malcolm's voice came through Ethan's earpiece. Sir, vehicles approaching. 4 of them. David went pale. Charles. Victoria's eyes widened. My father. David nodded. He thinks I brought you here to trade the file. Ethan stared at him. You don't have it. No. David looked at the old photograph. But your father told me exactly where it was hidden. Ethan's chest tightened. Building 47. David nodded. Floor 11. Room 3. Naomi whispered. Then why are we still here? David looked toward the growing headlights outside. Because Charles Langley knows the location too. Engines roared into the harbor. Warehouse doors rattled. Ethan turned toward Malcolm. Get Victoria out. Then every light inside Warehouse 6 suddenly shut off. A man's voice echoed from outside. Ethan Blackwood. Charles Langley. Victoria's father. You have something that belongs to me. Ethan stepped toward the darkness. No, Charles. His voice was steady now. I think my father left something that belongs to every person you betrayed. And somewhere outside, multiple car doors opened at once. Charles Langley's voice echoed through the dark warehouse. You have something that belongs to me. Ethan stood beside Naomi while Malcolm's security team moved silently into position. No, Charles, Ethan called back. My father left evidence you were never supposed to find. The warehouse doors burst open. Charles entered with 3 men. Victoria stared at her father. You used me. Charles barely looked at her. I protected this family. You sent me into Ethan's life because you wanted his archive. Charles' expression hardened. And you failed. That single sentence destroyed whatever loyalty Victoria still had left. She stepped toward Ethan. The access codes are in my phone. Everything my father asked me to steal is there. Charles shouted, Victoria! But she ignored him. Malcolm immediately signaled police waiting outside. Sirens erupted. Charles' men froze. Within minutes, the warehouse was surrounded. Charles tried to run through a rear exit, but officers caught him before he reached the harbor. David Mercer surrendered peacefully. Then Ethan, Naomi, and investigators traveled to Building 47. Floor 11. Room 3. Behind an old steel cabinet was a sealed compartment. Inside sat a waterproof case. The original witness transfer list was there. So were Jonathan Blackwood's handwritten records showing that Charles Langley had secretly sold protected identities for millions. But one document shocked Naomi more than everything else. Marcus Lewis. Her late husband. His name appeared as the investigator who had rediscovered the hidden payments 3 years earlier. Attached was a memo. Marcus Lewis contacted me. He knows about Langley. Protect him. Ethan looked at Naomi. My father knew your husband. Tears filled her eyes. And he tried to help him. The investigation that followed dismantled Charles Langley's network. Evidence connected him to financial crimes, obstruction, and the attempt to recover Marcus's files. Authorities also reopened the investigation into Marcus's fatal crash. Victoria cooperated fully. Her engagement to Ethan ended. She accepted that love could not repair what deception had broken. Months later, Ethan returned to the woodland estate with Naomi. The enclosure was gone. The dangerous animals had been relocated to a licensed rescue facility. Naomi stood beside the tree where she had once cried while Victoria watched from the shadows. I thought that day would be the worst moment of my life, she said. Ethan smiled faintly. Instead, it exposed everything. He offered Naomi a senior position in Blackwood's new Ethics and Employee Protection Division. She accepted. Not because of the salary. Because Marcus had spent his final months trying to uncover the same truth. At the launch event, Ethan introduced her personally. Naomi taught me something I should have understood years ago, he told the room. The person crying in fear is not always powerless. And the person laughing from behind the tree is not always winning. Naomi looked toward her daughter. Then toward Ethan. The dogs had been meant to frighten her into silence. Instead, they led everyone straight to the truth.